بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا، وأنت تجعل الهزم إذا شئت سهلا. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. أسأل الله تبارك وتعالى أن يجعل نياتنا خالصة لوجهه الكريم. يا رب يا حي يا قيوم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. إن شاء الله تعالى, today, يوم الجمعة, سيد الأيام, the best of all the days. I remind myself and I remind you of two benefits that you should do during this day and have a portion of it. The first of them is that we recite Surah Al-Kahf, the Surah of the cave, as this is a recommended thing to do on Yawm al-Jumu'ah, and we would get a reward. And we should start implementing these recommendations from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because there are benefits in these things, and we should do them. And if we were in a state of a taqsir, we were falling short in doing that, we should pick up some, even if it's a couple verses. Open your Quran and read 3 verses, 5 verses from Surah Al-Kahf, and reflect. If you can do the whole surah, do the whole surah. But do something. Start to embody in ourselves practices from among those things that are from the Sunnah of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam only encouraged us and emphasized us to do those things because in them are our good ad-din wa dunya wal akhirah. In those things are goodness for us in our religious practices, in our worldly matters, and in the matters of the hereafter. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never gave the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam anything except that thing was to move us to that which was best for us. So whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inspired the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to convey to us a noble deed or virtuous deed, what we call fada'il a'mal, virtuous deeds, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave that to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Oh, my sound. Allah. Assalamu alaikum. Is my sound clear? Inshallah. Allah. Okay. So whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala legislated to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to give us something that would be among his sunnah practices, we should implement them, understanding that in them are good for us in the deen, in the world, and in the hereafter. So that's the first thing. So may us, when we finish this, inshallah, all of us go to our Quran and recite some of Surah Al-Kahf. The second thing is on Friday, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam encouraged us to have abundance of salutations and peace upon him, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. And this day, we should have a lot of saying, as-salatu was-salamu alayka ya sayyidi ya Rasulullah. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. And many other expressions, even the expression that you have in the prayer when you say, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad, كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. These expressions, we should have a lot of it on Friday. And sufficient that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us that Allah and His angels, they send salutations on the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Or you believe, send salutations and blessings upon him, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi wa ala alihi. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, the closest to me on the day of judgment is the one who has the most salah and salam on me, the one who sends the most salutations and prayers on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. On the day of judgment, that person will be the closest to the Prophet sallallahu wasallam. And one of the things that I benefited most with the years Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. The years that I've accompanied some of my teachers, one of the things that I learned most from them is to have as a companion two things: a beneficial book and three things, a beneficial book, a lot of La ilaha illallah, and a lot of salat wa salam ala Rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And to the point that some of them were so engaged in making salutations on the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that they used to do that while they were sleeping. And these are things I witnessed with my own eyes. While they were sleeping, they still had a connection to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam alayhi wa ala alihi. So I advise myself and I advise you, today is a good day to start to have a portion of Al-Quran al-Kareem in reading Surah Al-Kahf, and every day have a small portion, even if it's one page, even if it's 3 ayat that you reflect. Because don't consider the small amount, really consider the quality of your recitation and your pondering. As Allah said, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ أَمْ عَلَى قُلُوبِهِمْ أَقْفَالُهَا. Do they not ponder on the Quran, or are their hearts locked? So, qira'ah, reciting, ma'a tadabbur, and with pondering, it has a great effect, even if it's only one verse, or two verses, or three verses, or even a whole page, or even a hizb, or even a whole juz. All of that is beneficial, so make use of it. Today, as it is Friday, I wanted to reflect on some things. And that's why the title of this Post-Fajr Reflection is Notions That Need to Be Corrected. And actually, this was a book by the Sheikh of our Shuyukh, who wrote a book entitled this, and the book is translated in English. It's called Notions That Need to Be Corrected, written by Sayyid Muhammad bin Alawi al-Maliki, rahmatullah alayhi. And I would suggest it's a good book that all of you should read. It's called Notions That Need to Be Corrected. And in this book, he dealt with several issues that affect the Muslim community that they have a misunderstanding of. And I wanted to address some of these things that are relative to us, especially us in our society in America, and from all of the discussions that we had this week with our sisters, with our brothers, with our educators, and with these post-fajr reflections, I'm noticing a lot of things. And one notion that I believe we need to correct, and I want you to share with me. So today is your day to give me your input on, give me your input on the things I'm going to mention today. So I'm asking for you. Today is a chance. Stay within the subject I'm talking about, but I want to hear from you. And I want to engage you as the audience who has been very diligent, and I thank you for being diligent in your attendance, in your sharing, in your spreading, because we are together developing a movement that I think is very needed in America as a whole, in the Black community in specific. We are doing something that is needed, and we're giving a platform to our leaders and our teachers to express themselves in a way that they would normally not be able to. So these platforms that we have established are very essential for our growth and development as a community. One of the notions that I think needs to be corrected, I honestly believe this, that not speaking about an issue, the issue was going to go away. By not speaking about it, by not dealing with it, by not confronting it, the issue is going to disappear. And I think this is a notion that needs to be corrected. And I want to deal with it from the aspect of Black people in America as a whole, and specifically Black Muslims in Islam. And that issue of not speaking about things. Am I still having audio problems or no? I thought I'm clear. I thought I fixed it. Let me try it again. Allah, Ya Rab. Okay, I hope it's clear now. So there are several issues. When we talk about racism, let's just talk about from Black people in the world, in the American society. When we look at the world, is it clear now? I know you have a delay, so I think it should be fixed, inshallah ta'ala. If not, I'll make another adjustment. Okay, good. In the world, we face systemic racism in America. And it is around the world, but in America, we suffer this issue of systemic racism. And it is something that has been going on for over 400 years. But what we have the tendency to do as a people is we only confront systemic racism when it becomes overt and very, very, very oppressive. Though we realize that the system is in place and it has been going on for hundreds of years. And such a system, the only way you're going to resolve the issue is to constantly, diligently address the issue till the system of systemic racism or white supremacy is completely removed. If you think it's going to subside by partially dealing with it, then you got another thing coming, and that's why even in the midst of protests, rioting, looting, they still killing Black folks. Why? Because there is a system that is in place that facilitates such evil practices. And until we deal with the system that has its roots in slavery, in taking land, and being oppressive, then no matter what form that system changes into, it's still the same ugly system. As one of my teachers one time, he said that I fear more the eloquent devil in a suit, in a business suit, than I fear the devil that's just outright with their racism. And that happens a lot. The form has changed, and sometimes we get comfortable within the oppressive system and therefore for our comfort, we won't address it. This is a problem, right? So we all know that racism exists, that economic disparities exist, educational disparities exist, gender disparities exist. We all know these things, and they are systemic. We understand that. But the question is, how have we become comfortable in that system, and therefore we don't want that system that we complain about to be removed because of the comforts we found in it? I'm giving you my thoughts, and I'm definitely asking for your feedback, right? So that's in the society, and that is something that Black people and other minorities face, but not at the level of Black people or African Americans. Let me move that to Islam. Islam, we have the same thing. Many of us, as we talked before, find in Islam the same problems that we found in society. So in Islam, you will hear many Blacks complain about racism within Islam, right? And how Black Muslims are treated as an inferior in Islam, right? Among other Muslims. This is a known fact, undeniable. We cannot argue that. Anyone who argues that fact doesn't realize the plight of Black Muslims in Islam. And when I say Black Muslims, I'm going to tell you, don't think this is unique to just Black American Muslims. As I've studied overseas, Blacks are treated in overseas the same way. Africans, when I was studying in Egypt, and this is back 1989, so it's a long time ago, right? The condition of Africans in Egypt studying in Al-Azhar will make you want to cry. You see how some of them were living. And that was then. They were treated very badly, right? And you can see it. That's a condition. I've seen and all around the world this issue of racism against Black people. This is not a new phenomenon. So we have this issue, but what happens is we stop addressing the issue. Someone may give us the field to address this issue. It's like we're dividing the Muslim nation, but we're not being counted a part of the Muslim nation. And a clear sign of that, when the Muslims are having conferences or having gatherings to talk about issues, the Black Muslim is never at the table. That's abroad and that's local, right? So, and if the Black Muslim is at the table, and this is going to hurt, that Black Muslim at the table is usually in a token position and is only given token speech. But as in terms of real power and effective change, it doesn't exist. And we have become accustomed to that. So the system of oppression and the system of systemic racism within Islam will continue until someone addresses it and addresses it diligently, daily, on all levels. That's one aspect. So that's in terms of racism. All right, let's go to the term of economic disparities, or disparities between classes of people in terms of economics and finances. You find in the society, Black folk are given the worst of jobs, the least of opportunities, not given loans, not given things that allows them to build and develop. Very few get through the cracks, but there is a system, even in banking and loan lending, that you find that Blacks are treated different from whites, not given the opportunities as whites. And therefore, you find a disparity in the wealth gap, in jobs, in careers, and even, and I'll tell you, I worked before being an imam, I worked in construction, in uh, and I watched in the trades and all of the building across America, how black folks are left with the lowest level in the construction field. And those who go to major trades that earn higher money are very few, they are minorities. And they run everything based on that system of racism, white supremacy, and its economic disparity. It's all in that culture, even in the trades. And anyone who works in the trades, they know this, right? But even in these are just labor jobs. So when we talk about in the intellectual fields and academia, you find the same thing. And in every level, you find people talking about the disparity in the wealth gap. You go to Islam, the Muslims are finding the same thing, where the Muslims have a lot of wealth, but very little of that wealth is dispersed and shared in the black community. But all the struggles that others have is shared and dispersed among the black community. So when there is an issue of a Palestinian issue, or a Pakistani issue, or a Syrian issue, or an Arab issue, or any other issue that's put at the forefront of the black agenda, but the black agenda is never given a platform to be expressed even among the Muslims, even among black Muslims, that we would find ourselves in our masajid praying for everyone except ourselves. This is a problem. And it can go back almost to the Malcolm saying that we worried about the master's house more than ourselves. And we've all become, in a way, in Islam, Islamic house Negroes, where everyone else's concern is more important to than yours. And if you talk about your concern, you're being racist. You're practicing, bias. But when it's the norm that others are racist, others are unmindful of our condition, then we don't want to address that. And this is a problem. And I blame big part of the problem, a big part of it, is on black Muslim leaders who know this and get themselves in a position and start to, tap dance to maintain their status quo at the expense of our people. And I think this needs to be addressed. And in that way, we will empower our leaders. Though we do have a responsibility that we need to support our leaders and give them the independence so that they can speak freely. Not everybody's going to have the condition that allows them to speak absolutely free. And that usually has a price. And sometimes that price is death. And many of us are not prepared to die. And I always grew up, if you're not willing to die for your beliefs, you don't have any. And that's not a cliche. If you're not willing to die for your beliefs, you don't have any beliefs. And this is a serious thing. But we're finding similarities between the black community and the Muslim community, the black Muslim community. And how do we start addressing these things? Because sometimes people, and I want to address this, if you have any comments or questions about what I just said, please put it up so I can address it, so I don't have to go all the way back and look at the questions, because I'm trying to engage with you as I go along. And it's very important. I want to go, and then the issue of gender we had yesterday, and I was thinking about it all night and this morning. And I want us to start having these hard conversations. There are a lot of our sisters who feel that they've been silenced and they're speaking out. I'm talking about Black Muslim sisters, right? And in the Black community, it's the same thing. And if you read the mission of Black Lives Matter, you'll notice that that is a lot of Black women who felt, you know, marginalized are leading those movements. And also at the same time, other agendas are being pushed to push their agenda. And that happens, and that's a discussion, and we should have it. But I find in the Black community, among our Muslim sisters, especially those who have achieved excellence in secular education, that there is this usage of my secular education to force my way into the Masjid, into the Islamic institutions, to have a voice, which you should have. But I'm wondering how much of the baggage from Western education and Western studies are you bringing to that discourse that you're giving within Islam? And I think this is something that we need to talk about. What is us as Muslims? What is the role of men and women? And how do those roles coincide? Yeah, I said force their way. And if you ask why I'm having a discussion, I'm not one, and you know me, to hold my tongue. I'll try my best to be, sensitive, but I'm not going to not speak the reality. I won't do that. So we having discourse, and my platform is open for those who may disagree. And I would like someone to disagree that is in a position of leadership. Why do I say that? I mean that you're influencing people, because then you can articulate the issue better than someone who's just listening to someone else. So you yourself can articulate the issue. And what do I mean by forcing the way? That means I have achieved a certain level in the secular world, right? And I'm going to speak real, because I don't know many of our women, and I know a lot of them, who have the ability, and this may be a problem, I believe it's a big problem, that don't have the scholastic Islamic ability and qualifications to address those concerns through the Islamic lens properly, without feeling inferior to men. And that's a part of education, that we need to uplift our women in Islamic education so they don't have that feeling. But nevertheless, that is something that exists, right? And I got a reason why that exists too, and I'll discuss that. So we need women's scholarship. I agree. I'm foremost in the front line of Black women Islamic scholarship. But I want to say to ourselves, how do we define that? And we should, for men and women, have some kind of scale that we develop, even if we're not there. So maybe in our time, we're not where we want to be, but we set a standard by which future generations would achieve. And then we'll have equality in education between men and women. But we can't bypass the work that bypass the work that is needed to be put in to do that. No one's going to give you a doctorate if you don't do the work to get a doctorate. You can't just say, well, they give honorary doctorate degrees, but they don't have no real weight to them. But you got to put in the work. So now, why are we using secular education to use that to give us status in Islam? I don't agree with that at all, because that is a way of bringing that white supremacist idea, those ideas into Islam through our women. So you're getting your independence, but also in the same way, you're bringing into our religion things that don't belong there. And they're not being distinguished between what belongs and what doesn't belong because we're not having these conversations about what is our standard of Islam. And I'll give you an example. You want to know why I'm hard on Wahhabism? And many people that are Wahhabi, they don't want to have this discussion. And the way to get out of it is I don't debate and I don't argue. Wahhabism was a way to bring white supremacy into Islam around the world. Because white supremacy is not just designed for black folk. White supremacy is something that is designed to have global domination, not just among Africans, around everyone other than white folk. And if you have a study of history and you be honest, Wahhabism is a product that was pushed by the British to overthrow the Islamic rulership and to come with ideas that contradicted Islam because Islam was the most significant threat to white domination. This is just fact. And if we have embodied the doctrine and we have taken on the doctrine of the oppressor, the doctrine of white supremacy, we see how it is affecting us in our communities. And that's why if you look at Wahhabi doctrine, it had no greater harmful effect as it had in the black community. Right? So here is my challenge. We have to start having real conversations and not be afraid of them. We have to have ideas that can be challenged. I'm putting my ideas out. They should be challenged. I'm not saying my ideas shouldn't be challenged. They should be. And then we should have real discussions because this is really not all about us. It's about the salvation of future generations of black men and black women and black children. So we got to have real heart-to-heart conversations. I want to see that idea that we talked about last night, where we have black women scholars and black men scholars in Islam that we reverence, that we look up to, that we honor. But what are we doing that's going to facilitate that? And what are we doing that is hindering that? So these conversations need to be had. And I'm just putting some notions out. Now, you're going to listen to those notions and you're going to challenge them. That's part of dialogue. I don't like cowards. I don't. I never, if anyone knows me, I hate a coward. I need a man and a woman with courage. We need courageous people. We cannot be cowards. And what do I mean cowards? I don't mean physical all the time. You don't have to fight, right? I mean a person who has a position and believes that that position is beneficial and will stand upon it and defend it. Not in arrogance, but have those ideas. Not, I just got my opinion and that's it. No, we have to, what? We have to dialogue and challenge each other. And not for the harm, but for our ultimate benefit. Let me pause there and look, because there were some questions and some statements that I want to deal with, inshallah. Allah, so I dealt with that one. The one statement was, I wonder, are the sisters forcing their way, or are they attempting to make the skills apparent in a male-dominated community? And I think it has both ways. But it may be, the intention may be just to make the skills apparent, and that may be it. But sometimes it is reflected as forcing your way in. And I'm talking from the man's side, because maybe someone's not going to tell you that. And a lot of men, they may feel a certain way, but we're not expressing it to the woman. And we might not even know how to express, right? And that's why you feel this rebellion. So if you're just trying to share a skill that's going to uplift all of us, and you feel this tension in this opposition, then you got to also address where is that coming from. Why are black men or in the Masjid, Imam, why are they so cautious to accept the skill set of women? What is that? That's a discussion we need to have. And maybe by having that discussion, the men may identify something that they don't realize, or that they are intentionally doing, but it ain't pointed out. That's a discussion that you need to have. So I'm just telling you how men sometimes look at things. And I'm talking about men who are leaders, because what has happened now, and especially in what I like to call a sort of black Muslim feminist movement, that's what I like to call it. You may not like the term, but I'm telling you how we see it. In terms of, you got women who are assertive, and let's take the good aspect of it. They want to share their skill set in the community. And they find a resistance from leadership or from black men who are in charge, right? Muslim men. And this could be found in the immigrant community too. They have this issue too. But I'm specifically talking about the black community. So there is this clash, right? And what happens is too, another clash is developing. I'm seeing it. You have a lot of women that they, in these movements, they find men who never were able to assert themselves in a strong man environment in the Islamic community. So they team up with these sisters that push that agenda, and they themselves, they ride behind the women. So they become men who are now not leaders, they're followers to push their own personal agenda because they weren't strong enough to do it themselves. And this is an issue that I see. And that's a discussion. I think this is what I see, right? So when we have these discussions, we can flush all this stuff out. But if we never talk about it, if we never address it, then I don't think we're going to get anywhere. Just being silent. We're going to stay at this all the time, right? And that's the same thing with Wahhabism. We're going to stay fighting until we address issues and flush this stuff out. I mean, I wish I could have all of you had speakers so you could talk as well, but unfortunately, we're limited on this. Oh, no. Okay, same concept. It says, Imam, we have to start with mindset. What influences mindset? We have to reprogram. I agree. I think sometimes that instead of saying mindset, I would say what is the foundational things that lead to all these. I think we need to get our shovels out and dig deep to find out where we went wrong and what we need to do to adjust that. So I think that, but that needs to be discussion. I mean, I don't have the answers for everything. And all I'm doing is maybe, hopefully, I will agitate someone into action. So you got people say, I don't believe he just said that. Okay, well, let's come talk about it. And I want to see the best for us, but I'm just like, okay, it's like shock treatment. I don't believe he had enough. Everyone felt it. I just said it. You know, that's that, as that man, the brother said, or I don't know if it was a brother or a sister, but that's that 500-pound elephant in the room that nobody want to talk about. It's there. We see it, but no one want to touch it. And I think we need to start touching this stuff if we're going to move forward. I'm sorry. Uh, as it was mentioned last night, many African American masjids have ignored the role of women in Islam, both secular and Islamic. And I would like to know how we did it secularly. I mean, I got the Islamic part because maybe women weren't given positions of authority in expressing Islam from their point of view and from their understanding. I get that. The secular part, I don't know too many masjids that are really engaged in the secular world, so I don't understand fully how they would have ignore the role of women in the secular realm when most African American masters have nothing to do with the secular realm. So, I mean, I would need you to expand on that somehow, some way. And all these things are for future discussions on the Black Imams Roundtable. So we would bring in speakers that we think can articulate these things well so that we can have these conversations among ourselves and get to some solutions. Okay. Okay. Allah. Okay. I'm surprised I don't have much to say. Maybe y'all all agree with me. Alhamdulillah. I believe we're all victims of our oppression, and we sometimes get comfortable in our victimization. And I think we need to get out of being victims and start working to overthrow the oppressive uh, systemic structure that has been placed over us to make us victims. And I think we need to work on that. You know what I mean? But first, we have to empower ourselves. And one of the ways we're going to empower ourselves is by having these conversations. Well, how are masjids not involved in the secular realm? Black masjids, that's why we're so poor, because we're not involved in the secular realm. All we do, a lot of us, is it's all religious and no world. And that's why most of the masajid in the African American community have financial deficiencies, they have skill set deficiencies, organizational deficiencies. These are struggles because we've been given a doctrine that tells us to divorce the world. Don't be involved in the secular world. And that was a form of escapism for a lot of us. So that's what I see. And I travel all around the country and I see the same thing. Very few masajid, and I'm going to give you an example to show you that they're not really involved in the secular world. Most of the African American masajid don't even have a full paid staff, not even the imam. So if we were engaged in the secular world and society as a whole, we wouldn't have that problem. Just like the immigrant masjids, most of their imams are paid a living wage, especially in the major Islamic centers, in the immigrant community, in the suburban communities. They're paid and they have staff. Why? Because they're all engaged in the secular world. Whereas in our community, that hasn't been the mode of operation. We don't have male-dominated black communities. Why do we think we have a male-dominated black Muslim gap? I think there is generation gap in understanding what is really going on the ground. Oh, that's a whole nother discussion, Brother Issa. Sayyidi, there is a disconnect in our community between grassroots and those who have made it. And there is a detachment there. And most of us, uh, when we achieve, we forget where we come from. And that's a big problem. Or when we come back, we talk down to those who haven't achieved what we have achieved. And this is a problem. I don't deny that Islam tells us to be involved. I'm just telling you the reality on the ground. I agree with you. We should be involved in society. But the doctrine that was given to us, and that is predominantly Wahhabism, told us not to be involved in the society. And you can't deny that. Because here's one thing we're not accepting, that a lot of our communities were given an Islam that is not proper Islam, which is Wahhabism. And we don't want to address that because now we got to say I've been duped again, and we don't want to deal with that. So I think that's something you need to address. And many of us, we still Gotta learn Islam. We don't even know what Islam is. I'm not talking about surface, the five pillars. That is not going to change the world. Islam is much more involved, especially when we're talking about all the aspects of life. Life ain't just ibadat, acts of worship. Life is mu'amalat. Life is government. Life is family. Life is business. All that stuff is a part of the deen. And we've been given an understanding of Islam that negates all that. That's why we don't follow Madahib. That's why we don't practice the Tasawwuf. All of those things came from an ideology about Islam that was given to us by white supremacists who wanted to enslave us or wanted to control us and colonize us. And we went through it and we accepted it. Now that we're dealing with it, it's like, oh, don't talk about that. Oh, you're radical. You're extreme. No, you've been bamboozled and you refuse to accept it. And you refuse to address the issue. That's real. You got an Islam that you don't even know the proper belief in God. And you calling it Islam. The thing that the Prophet ﷺ came to change the world with, you're confused about. You're sitting here having a discussion with someone who doesn't even know how to properly believe in God. The very essence of Islam, the foundation of the deen, the person has a corrupt concept of God, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you telling me we got to follow that? But we say yes. And then we brush it off and say, oh, don't get into polemics. Man, give me a break. No, because if that's the case, one of the first things that white supremacy has done is corrupt the concept of their belief in God to making them think that the white man is God. So they gave a religion that deified whiteness and gave it to the world. In Africa, you got black people from the culture of a civilization of great kings and queens got a white Jesus hanging in their buildings in Africa. And we know what they gave the slaves, who were some of the Muslims who came in with Tawheed, with the correct Aqidah of Ahlul Sunnah. They weren't Wahhabis, and they changed them to worshiping white man, and we still got black folks today in America with all of the being woke and Afrocentric movements. We still got Negroes worshiping a white Jesus. I mean, that's a serious issue. So I say to ourselves that we gotta address some stuff, and we can't be afraid. But now when we address that issue, some of us gotta say, man, I got hoodwinked, I got bamboozled, I got swindled again, and that is hurtful. That is trauma right there, and I agree. But that's why we need doctors. That's why we need to learn how to get over our loss and our hurt and our pain. Yeah, we got to address that stuff. Okay, let me move on. Nah, you know I'm open to it. Some sisters have been open. Nah, not all sisters are open. I'm not gonna let you fly with that. Nor all brothers are closed. You know, some sisters they have an agenda and they don't want to be challenged. They just want to get it on. And social media has made it even more strong because you can hide behind your computer. You can hide behind your computer and talk junk without having your ideas challenged. And nah, let's challenge, because at the end of the day, we need an Islam that's going to be generational. We need something that's going to last for 1,000 years, and we need it. Okay, Easter Bank. I often hear you mention the lack of paid staff in our Masjid. Can you dissect this belief we have that in order to protect our sincerity, it's necessary to do everything peaceably now? This thought process needs to be removed by actual education of the examples laid down. All you got to do is learn Islam properly. Lead people in the Islamic state, in Islamic governments, traditionally have always been taken care. They developed systems of endowment to pay teachers and scholars and imams and workers in the Islamic field of community development. This has always been something that is paid. What the problem is, we're still learning how to live Islam in a non-Islamic society. So we have a society within a society. So that, I think that's one of the big problems, that the masjid has become its own country and its own rules, but it's internal and it's a society that doesn't support it. So we haven't learned to uh, embrace that reality and then develop it. Not saying everybody, because many have tried to tackle this issue, but as a collective, we haven't tackled this issue. So the idea that you should do everything and it's free is not sustainable. That's why our masajid, we lose them. Some of them close down. Our children have no desire to be totally active in the masajid because there is no sense of secular and religious combined. We have become, in our own self, a separation of mosque and state. And Islam doesn't have that separation. The masjid was the place where state affairs were run from in the time of the Prophet. So I just think we need to a lot of this is understanding the deen and then how to contextualize that understanding in our present reality. Yeah, I think when you're talking about it sounds the same. That's because people are not listening, and education is not being put forth. And I think one of the biggest problems is people who have the knowledge being timid and afraid to convey it. We tap dance around issues too much. So you got a person who studied many years overseas, know traditional knowledge, know the history of Wahhabism, know all of these things, know that these things, the differences between and what's right and what's wrong, and will join them and remain silent just to get along, just to have their status, and cover it with, I'm trying to do da'wah. Okay, I'm not seeing the effect of your da'wah. It's killing us, especially in the inner cities. Because I travel in the suburbs. The suburbs in the immigrant communities, they don't have these kind of problems with Wahhabism like we have in the inner city. Their families are not being destroyed because of Wahhabism. They are fighting against it, trust me. And there are movements around the world to stop it. But it ain't killing them like it's killing us. And I mentioned it to you. If they had that big conference about this issue, and they addressed it because their communities are suffering from it. Their countries are suffering from it. And they addressed it. But when it comes to us, no one cares about the black people. And the black people haven't learned to care about themselves. So let it spread and go around and destroy their families and destroy their communities and corrupt their understanding of the deen, corrupt their understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, corrupt their understanding of Islamic law, corrupt their understanding of Islamic spirituality. Leave them corrupted black. Who cares? They're a waste anyway. And we say, okay, that's fine. No problem. I think we need to challenge them. Let me go up. What about the black Muslim leaders looking to white Muslims for approval? That's financial, I believe. I believe that's financial because unfortunately, a lot of them are on the payrolls of white Muslims, immigrant Muslims. So therefore, in order to sustain themselves, they studied, they come back, they found poverty in the black community. They try to serve the black community. The black community doesn't support them. They go flee to other institutions that will pay them, that will recognize their scholarship, to the extent that it's being used. And I think that's a lot of reasons why you find black leaders looking towards them. I think a lot of it, and I know it because I'm in them circles. And believe me, the same conversation I have in public is the same conversation I have in private. It's not a difference. In public, I just don't mention names. But those leaders, I've talked to every single one of them. They know what I'm talking about. It's rough, but I can't ignore someone's financial plight, and that's an issue for us that we gotta support our leaders. We gotta be able to sustain our institutions. We do need money. That's why I always put across this thing, MMINC.org, Cash App. And sometimes our people are shy to ask each other for money. We need money. If we're going to build, if we're going to have strong leaders, they can't be broke. In 1965, Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz, rahimahullah ta'ala, rahmatin wasiyah, he wrote a letter talking about he can't travel because he don't got no money. And he was begging people in Saudi Arabia to fund him. It is real. He was broke. His family was living with another family. He was in a hotel. He had no money. He was the most prolific speaker and Muslim leader in that era, and he was broke. But no one talks about that. We talk about all his speeches and Malcolm, rahimahullah, but we never talk about how poor and underfunded Malcolm was. If Malcolm was funded, you imagine what he would have done if he was funded by his own people. What he would have done? He said it. Black people don't support. He said it. Malcolm said that, not Imam Amin. Malcolm couldn't even go on trips because he didn't have no money. He was broke. His money that he had was through the Nation of Islam, and they understood supporting their mission at least. Even if they said one person was getting all the money. But he was able to travel around the world, do all those speaking engagements because he was funded by that machine behind him called the Nation of Islam. When he lost that funding, that was it. He couldn't be effective as he would have been with his great mind. And still today, you got leaders that can do a lot, but they're not funded. They're not supported. And I can go around the country, right, where we got talented black leaders, men and women who are not funded by black people. They are funded by others. And since they're funded by others, they dance to the tune of others. This is a real talk. We're talking about facts, that's facts. And I challenge any of our leaders, any one of them, to debate me on this. And I ain't talking about debate as an argument. Debate the fact that many of our black leaders are not supported by us, and it is one of the main reasons why they are subdued by others, why they're at the table seeking the crumbs that fall from their master's table. This is real. And you can't, I'm one person, you can't tell me that's not the case. And that's why I work hard and I encourage everyone around me, yo, please, please take care of this money issue. If you don't take care of this money issue, you're going to be ineffective in America. It ain't going to happen. You're going to be a voice crying, screaming in the wind. You got to take care of the financial issue. You got to support your leaders. You got to support your black voices. You got to put your money where your mouth is. I agree. First, we must accept the process of colonization was successful. And then we must be about some serious change. It is a slow process, but if we assist one another, we will be successful. I agree. That's a summary of everything I'm trying to get across. Could you put that statement up from Sister Megina? First, we must accept the process of colonization. And I like to say that that's a broad thing. Slavery, colonization, economic domination, political domination, all that stuff is part of the colonization and the enslavement of black people. And once we accept that, because when we address all of our issues in every field, see, we think because I became a Muslim that the white man ain't after me. And then I say that. And when I say the white man, that doesn't mean the white man. I'm not saying the white man like the devil. I'm saying this system of white supremacy is by white folks. They're pushing that down the world. That's real. That's not fake. That's real. And they kill for that. They destroy countries, take resources, right? This is real. We can't ignore that. So we did Islam and act like racism don't exist. While racism in Islam is staring us in the face. I'll give an example. I know many black Muslims who have been Muslims for 4, 5, 6 decades. Black men who studied overseas years, but I guarantee you, I can mention white people who went overseas, equivalent, and now they're national leaders. They're the voice of Islam in America, and they're white. And the black man who's been doing this thing for decades can't even get on the stage without a white man or an immigrant in front of him. Talk back to me. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. That ain't racist. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. And I'll show you in the heart of black communities where you got white leaders in black communities leading black children, while there are equally qualified black people right there. But you won't find black leaders in the immigrant community except that they're servants, except that their voices are toned down, except that they're speaking to issues that have nothing to do with black people in a real way. And let's bring it. I'm willing to have that conversation with anybody. Not because I'm saying this not in a manner of arrogance. I'm just saying it's time, this is what I believe. This is my belief. If we don't see this moment as black Muslims to stand up and speak the truth, we're going to lose this moment and we're going to pass this stuff down to our children. And for me, I have a little baby, a young black baby, who I want to be a great scholar, who I want to be a leader. I refuse to not do everything in my power to change the condition that he's going to face. I refuse to do it because I am an example of what would happen when 50 years later, after Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz, rahimahullah, he's still having these conversations. Somewhere along the line, the ball got dropped. The struggle lightened. We wasn't fighting like we should because we should not be having these discussions in the same way we had these discussions in 1955 and 65 and in the 50s. No. Go play a Malcolm X tape anytime. Take 1965 or wipe out the date and tell me you ain't think Malcolm X is talking about today. So if that's not the case, you just take away the date. You think he's talking about today. Change the verbiage from the 50s and use the verbiage we use today. It's the same conversation. Ain't nothing changed. In fact, I think it got worse because now we're deluded to think that we actually achieved something and we're in the same state, and that's the trick of the devil to give you something under false pretenses while he further enslaves you. Allah. I'm sorry. I gotta go back up. I'm trying to field the questions as I go along. And as I said, I'm open for discussion. So those who really are able to address these issues, I want to address them. I want to solve them. I want to prepare a next generation, inshallah ta'ala. I agree, immigrant masjids are cultural centers of a particular ethnicity with Islam, and I don't see nothing wrong with that. That's all around the world, so that's not problematic. The problem is that we refuse to have our own centers that reflect our culture and our needs and concerns. I don't blame no one else for taking care of themselves. I blame us for not taking care of ourselves. And there's reasons why we have learned not to take care of ourselves, and that's what I'm trying to address so that we can be on par with everywhere else in the world. I don't blame people for taking care of themselves. I say, good, you should take care of yourself. That doesn't mean because I love me, don't mean I hate you. Because I love me, don't mean I hate you. And just as it applies for them, it is equal for us. We have the same right. We have the same right to self-determination as everyone else. We have the same self-right to love ourselves, to uplift ourselves and our concerns and our issues. We have the same right. That is Allah's gift to us. I'm not going to take that away because we don't have it. I'm saying let's establish it. Yes, 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 yes. For identifying the need to integrate aspects of select secular into Islamic. Do you still feel the sisters have been wrong to try to integrate their expertise from the secular world into the masjid? Uh, no, I don't think the sisters are wrong. I'm just saying that can't be to the exclusion of Islamic knowledge. Because what we can't do is what many of the immigrant masajid have done. The immigrant masajid have left a lot of Islam and turned them into secular centers. And that's why even the structure of the masjid is based on secular Western corporate ideology, which doesn't work for us. So I'm not saying to not use it at all. I'm saying that it needs to be uh, balanced by an Islamic understanding and that which fits within the sacred law, and that is our standard. And what we can use that is good of it, we use, and what is bad of it, we reject. Allah. Right, let me move on. Allah. Here, one question is, Assalamu alaikum. When I see Sunni versus Wahhabi debates, they never debate Aqidah. They always debate aspects of the deen, like the hadith of the blind man, or aspects of innovation. I never see debates on Aqidah. Why is that? Uh, that's an hour. I tell you why. Because we have been given a watered down version of Islam. Everyone who has brought Islam to the black community has given us a watered down version of Islam. Everyone. They're guilty across the board. Across the board. That's not every individual. I'm talking about as a whole. Everyone who's brought Islam to the African Americans has given us a watered down version of it. And anyone who studied overseas, who studied in the Islamic, predominantly Islamic lands, knows that to be true. That's why we're still talking about today that we don't have Islamic scholars. And now you got some people who just lower the bar and say, we got scholars, but they're scholars with no scholarship. And the reason why we don't got scholars is they never gave us true Islam. They always gave us an Islam that made us servants to them. Just enough information so you follow me. Not enough to be independent. Not enough to build anything. Always you got to come back to me. But in every other nation, they had an Islam that they built a whole society. They got government, they got schools, they got universities. But in the black community, take my understanding of the deen so that you can always be a servant of me. Never become a scholar able to build your own. That has been stripped from us through Islam. And that is a direct result of white supremacy through Islam. And that is a direct problem with Wahhabism. That's a big problem. And against racism from people of Ahlul Sunnah, people that Sunnis who were racist, who when it came to the black people, they didn't educate them properly. That is the reason why many of them don't know nothing about Aqidah. Most of them can't even have an Aqidah discussion. They don't know because they gave them some superficial understanding of Islamic belief. They don't know. They've never studied books. They never sat down and read the books of Ahlul Sunnah, of Aqidah. Not even those who graduated from universities. Because what you don't realize is the university system in the Islamic world has followed the pattern of the West, not the traditional way of Islamic studies with a continuous unbroken chain back to the Prophet. They have cliff notes in those universities. So the person will graduate and don't know nothing. That's a problem. And then you go to the Islamic countries where the scholars see this problem now, that we got graduates who don't even know their Fard Ain. And they got doctor's degrees in Islamic studies. And they don't even know how to pray properly. But they got a degree. I graduated from this university and they ain't studied nothing. You know what happens in universities today? Don't be deluded by someone say I graduated from the University of Medina or I graduated from Azhar. They're not doing no real studying. They're tricking you. They're not scholars. They haven't even learned. They haven't even read complete books with teachers, most of them. If you ask them their curriculum and what they studied, you'd be shocked. But they're claiming scholarship. They're cheating. But it ain't them fault. That's what they was taught. That's what the master told you. Here's what you need. Now go back and educate your people with my doctrine. That's what happened. They ain't educate them people. That's why they're still servants to those scholars over there. Because they didn't teach them to be leaders. They didn't teach them to be scholars. They taught them to be servants of their ideology. That's real. And I challenge any of them in this issue. Be honest. You know it. I know it. Bring your curriculum. I'll prove it to you in 5 minutes. Bring your curriculum. You are a graduate from the University of Medina. You are a graduate from Al-Azhar. I'm talking about in our community. Bring me your curriculum. What did you study? Since you're a scholar, what was your curriculum? Now compare that to the traditional curriculum of Islam, of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Is a joke. It's a joke. No doubt about it. It's been played on us. We've been played. And I'm saying we got to stop that so the future generations can be equal on par. We can't have microwave Islamic studies and we're going to think we're going to change the world with that. We're going to be servants. Nobody's going to respect you. That's why we got all these graduates and you don't find none of them leaders on the world stage. When you go on the world stage, who you see representing America? White people. Go international conferences and talk about Muslims in America that are leaders. What face do you see? White folks, not black folks. Let's keep it real. If any of you know about the world stage in the world, international, when you see the West represented, the West is represented by white folks, not black folks. As if to say black people don't have scholarship. I ain't saying. Go look at any world conference where you see leadership represented from all the world, around the world, when you have major world conferences, international conferences. Go look at the speaker list and then go look at who's speaking for the West, for America. You will find white people. And that's why you have a lot of, in the Wahhabi movement, a lot of Arabic speaking people, they study and all they can do is translate. They don't teach nothing to nobody but Negroes. Let's be honest. It's facts, as they say. Let's be honest. They know it, but they are still carrying the doctrine of the slave master. They know it. I'm not making it up. This is real. I'm sorry to be so animated, but I've been through this stuff, man. I know what it's like. I know what it's like to be bamboozled. And now that we have the reality of Islam, it's still not put in our communities. We got it. We got brothers, dynamic sisters. But what's happening is we are not allowing them to flourish because those movements insist that someone like Sheikh Aisha Pram stay in her place. Nah, they're not going to give her a platform to speak on the Sunnati wal Jama'ah like she could do, like she learned, like she studied. They're not going to give her that platform. We got to give her that platform. They're going to use her for their agenda, not to serve us. That's why she's not every day in the black community, because we're not doing our job. We're not funding our leaders. That's why you got our leaders predominantly working for their institutions. And I'm saying we got to start helping our people. If we want our leaders to be real leaders, to be courageous, you got to make them independent. I know with Aisha Prime and many like her, if we funded them and supported them and gave of our wealth to them, I know what they'll do for our young black girls. But if we don't do that, so they're forced to go earn a living elsewhere. And when they go learn a living elsewhere, they can't speak the way they should speak, the way they know how to speak, to teach what they know how to teach, because the environment is not conducive for that. And I hate to use my sister, but that's my heart. She understands this, and I understand the problem. Or either we go challenge those institutions and make them change their direction. So we have two choices. Either we're going to challenge the establishment or we're going to build our own platform, one or the other. But we cannot leave it the way it is. And I'm saying this is Imam Dawood, same thing. These are strong black leaders. We got many of them. And I'm planning on sharing them with you. And it's risky. They're taking a risk for us. To talk outwardly, openly, they're putting themselves on the line. And we got to come through. We got to say, you know what? We got $1 million endowment. Y'all need to go ahead and speak and teach our people. We need to build this stuff. We can't just entertain ourselves on Facebook and then go back and do what we always do. Nah, we got to do more than that. And I hope my fellow colleagues don't get mad at me, but y'all know how I am. I'm tired. For real. I'm tired of this condition for us. Well, I gave you the answer. That's why. They're not supported. And you may say, well, they shouldn't be about money. That may be true. But I'm telling you why that's the condition. Our leaders are not supported enough by us. We have to fix that. I lost the question. Allah, I'm sorry. I'm moving. Is this particular to the black community or North America in general? It's particularly to the black community, but also it has its problem in the general of the West period. And it's really a world problem, but that's another story. Because if you look at these ideas have creeped all throughout Islam, around the world, right? Let's take our great universities, our great Muslim countries. They all been infiltrated by Wahhabism, all of them. Very few of them have remained free of Wahhabism. And even to the extent that that has become part and parcel around the world. We just at the bottom of the barrel. That's why it falls on us. But everybody around the world is fighting this stuff. If I share with you the amount of Arabic books that are written on this issue and scholars that are fighting this issue around the world, you'd be shocked. But we don't got the wealth. We got a wealth problem. And they got all the oil money and they use it wisely to defend their stuff and to spread their stuff. and to work with the enemies of Islam to block everyone that's out. That is real. We got to fight. We're fighting Shaitan and Fir'aun and Nimrud. We're fighting the modern day death. We got to fight on our hands. I agree that we got to have self-love and know about ourselves and how that works in our context of Islam. And I agree that if we don't fix the mental abuse and the disease that we have among each other, no one else is going to respect us. And that's fact. That's true. And that's painful because we got to do a lot of admitting. And, you know, one of the things I had a talk with someone, I have a talk sometimes, my brother, he's a non-Muslim. And me and him often talk about, you know, the hard realities that we are learning just to be black men. Because many of us grew up without fathers. We grew up in abusive environments. A lot of them in the inner city. We've seen a lot. Even if we weren't particularly, that wasn't our case, we witnessed it around us. And that stuff has an effect. Many of us don't know how to be fathers, don't know how to be husbands, don't know how to be uh, uh, maintainers of women. And many of our women been learning from struggle to be free and independent and think I don't need a man and I don't need nothing and I'm an independent woman and the song's been pushed down our throat. They just destroyed us from all ends. And until we start working together to address our own pain and our own suffering and all the psychological effects that have come from this, we're not going to be able to move. That is true. That's absolutely true. Allah, I'm way past time. I'm sorry. I didn't even realize it. Please forgive me. Inshallah, could you put up the flyer for tonight? I'm sorry for overextending my time. I didn't even realize it. But, you know, I talk from the heart, not from a paper, not from some prepared speech. I talk what comes to my heart. And the scholar said, when speech comes from the heart, it'll reach the heart. So I don't like to talk just looking at a paper. I know what I'm going to say. I know what I'm talking about. I've thought about well what I'm going to talk about. And, you know, I can take it. I can give it and I can take it. But I believe we need to have this conversation. I can give it and I can take it. So the idea that I'm running, I ain't running from nowhere. Never did. If you know me, I'm not going to run. I'm going to deal with it. You know, so you can go back and forth. I have no problem with it. Let's go. Because I'm standing for truth. That's what I want. And if the truth is against me, I'll take it. But if the truth is against you, you take it. Let's get the truth. And then we can help our people. As long as we live in lies and falsehood and delusion, we in trouble, man. We in trouble. All right, tonight we're going to have a real discussion. Tonight's going to be a real discussion. Because we're talking about Islam. You got two sheikhs among our people. Sheikh Abdul Kareem, he spent almost 12 or more years overseas. He studied in Damascus, Syria. He studied in Yemen, in southern Yemen, and I've been in both places. I've been with the scholars of both places. I understand what he learned. So it's like as I told him, I said, Sheikh, when you come on here, we got to be real. We're not tap dancing around issues. He knows. He's one of the lead translators for one of the greatest scholars of the Alawi tradition in our time, Habib Umar bin Hafiz, and he's in the black struggle. He knows all these issues we're suffering. He has his own community, Dar Rahma in Detroit, Michigan. He's starting from the ground. He's trying to build, and he is one who went, got the knowledge, come back, and now trying to serve our community. And we got to have real talk. And he knows what is traditional Islam. He knows the methodology. He knows exactly the same things I'm talking about. So I'm not saying nothing different from what he knows. His approach, the point may not be the same as mine, but the result should be the same. Likewise, Sheikh Hamza Abdul Malik, the same thing. He studied in Syria. He studied in Yemen, the same place. He graduated from Al-Azhar University in Egypt. He knows this tradition. He studied this tradition. He sat at the feet of scholars. We have in our community traditional Sunni Muslims, Al-Sunnah, who are not Wahhabi. But now we got to address these issues and educate our people. He has the Quran school where he wants to train young Muslims, especially African American Muslims, to make them a hufaz, memorizers of the Quran. He is a hafiz. He has producing, he is producing educated Muslims, teaching them the Islamic science in Memphis, Tennessee, at the Midtown Mosque and Midrash Academy. They are there. Tonight, we going in, as y'all say. We're going in. And I told both of them, we're going in. So be prepared to go in. So that's tonight at 7 o'clock, because I think we got to have discussions. And I know there are some who are going to run from these discussions, but we need some courageous people who are not afraid to run. And we're going to deal with it, because we need more voices on these platforms, more Black Sunni voices that are going to talk about these issues and help us get to the next stage of our Islamic development. And lastly, tonight at 10 o'clock, we're going to have our first session of Masjid Muhammad Traditional Reading Circle, because I'm going to put these books out. I'm going to put these books out. I'm going to go through everything we have in English, all the books that we have from our traditional scholars, from our traditional sequence of learning. I'm going to read all those books. That's my intention. All of them. So you will never say I didn't know. Now we're going to read them. I'm not going to do a lot of commentary, because a lot of commentary will take longer and we won't get through. I'm going to go through those books. I ask you to be patient, attend those sessions, and I'll make sure that you'll know enough that you can stand for your religion. You can stand for Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. You won't be afraid. You'll have the references. You'll know what this tradition is, and we can pass it on to the next generation. And then next Tuesday, we go back to the Black Imams Roundtable with our fellow Imams, Imam Luqman Ahmed, Imam Naeem Abdullah, and Imam Fahim Lee. And we're going to continue where we left off last week. And I need your suggestions, getting serious about economics and community development. Because we can talk about theory and we can talk about theology, we can talk about all that stuff. If we don't got no money, we're not building nothing. So we need to talk about that. So we need our business people to bring their ideas, and we need to match our business with our Islam, and we need to build, yes, the Book of Assistance is at the Masjid. We need to build our community. That's the real work. Because if we don't have economics and community development, we ain't going nowhere. We're just talking. May Allah help us. Please overlook any incorrect thing I said and correct me in that. I'm open for it. And that which I've said that is true, that you know is true, I need you to stand with me. I don't need, we don't need, I don't say I, we don't need superficial support. We need soldiers. We need people who's ready to strap their boots up, tie them up, get their weapons, and get on the battlefield and fight this struggle. We don't need cheerleaders in the stands. We need players on the field. And we need to develop our own teachers, our own scholars, our own businessmen, our own support systems, and we need to go crush this system of white supremacy with Islam, not with any other way, with Islam, as the Prophet ﷺ conveyed it, and it reached us with that unbroken chain. Barakallahu fikum wa jazakum Allahu khaira. Wa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Have a good Jumu'ah. May Allah forgive me and forgive you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.